to read something from the description that you probably all read of tonight's event that the center put together, which is Wikileaks gave us a glimpse of, by printing war logs by soldiers in the heat of engagement, exposing a brutally messy, confused snapshot. Quite a contrast to the sanitized public war portrayed by official sources and embedded reporting. And I wonder if you could all talk about that.
The whole question of, is it worth it to be in Afghanistan? I guess it's, you know, if the goal is it worth it to be in Afghanistan just so we can turn Afghanistan into the U.S., it won't be worth it because it's not going to happen. But if the goal is some baseline, as the Obama administration has defined it as, to have a base, some sort of government and security forces that can keep Al-Qaeda out of the country for the most part, and the Taliban to be, the Taliban are not going to ever be out of Afghanistan. That's a pipe dream. But there were not, you know, there will not be a full-scale civil war, and there will not be another September 11th-like attack in the United States. You know, if that's sort of possible, you know, maybe it's for you know, each person's gonna have to decide that.
Do you think that the soldiers there understood fully what their mission was, Sebastian?
I mean, their mission was to bring security to the Korangal. Like, that was their mission. And their mission was not countrywide or province-wide. It was in their AO, it was the Korangal Valley. And so platoon by platoon and company by company and battalion by battalion, those separate discrete missions accumulate and become an overall strategy in that country. But I mean, I mean, there's no reason to imagine that a 19-year-old who's in the Korangal Valley should have or could have a comprehensive view of the Afghan strategy as a whole.
I'm also not sure I buy that WikiLeaks suddenly like ripped the covers off and now we know the real capital T truth about the war. I mean, what the WikiLeaks documents are really are like internal memos from, let's say, a captain up to his lieutenant colonel, or a lieutenant colonel up to his colonel. And I mean, I think we've all worked in offices, so we know that like inter-office memos don't necessarily tell you what's going on at the office. You know, they're kind of like a piece of documentary evidence, but I'm not sure that they tell you more than, let's say, you know, watching Restrepo or, you know, reading C.J. Shivers, you know, report in the New York Times. I'm not sure I buy that.
What's striking to me is the distance between what reporting is showing us about this war and what the official pronouncements are about this war. And in that regard, I think the war is very comparable to Vietnam. It's very easy to make kind of facile comparisons between the wars. The wars are very different in terms of the shooting wars, but the talking wars are strikingly similar, where you have the reports that are coming out of off the ground being very different than the continued reports that we're making progress that are coming out of the Pentagon.
If the rest of the panel could tell me when they think the war would end and how it would end?
That goes back to the question of worth it. I think everybody except some folks in the military who hoped it would go on for another 10 or 15 years and who were arguing for that knew that the best case scenario was a military action that would put us in a better bargaining position for the peace talks. And that's what the July 2011 deadline was about, and that's kind of been the thinking, I think, for a long time. So I think it's inevitable it's going to go that way.
I feel like saying that the reason we're here having these agonizing questions and conversations, actually, I mean, the level of goodwill that I encountered in 2001 was so enormous by the Afghans. I think that was our chance, and we blew it. I mean, I think the Bush administration completely, they didn't care, they lost their focus, they went on to Iraq. You know, we left 19,000 troops there. I mean, there's 40,000 cops in this city, in New York City. I think the Afghans, I mean, I think their ambivalence comes not from an ambivalence about, you know, the fact that the international community was stepping in to try to stabilize the country and defeat the Taliban. The ambivalence came from the fact that they saw the troop numbers and they just knew it wasn't going to work.
You know, who's the U.S. to to lecture the Afghans on cleaning up corruption. So there's a schizophrenia in the American government, and so that's why I think that they're not going to come to any kind of really coherent solution on corruption.
And so to me, WikiLeaks is like the Napster of open information, and that there's going to be like lots more to come. And I think that there's a lot of really smart people at WikiLeaks right now that are trying to figure out if there's a way to do this, like sort of de-Julian Assange WikiLeaks, or if they got to go create their own next thing. And I think it's great because, look, I mean, as reporters, we've all dealt with this. The level of secrecy about the most ridiculous crap is unbelievable.